All right, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you everybody for joining today's webinar, Automate SAP Accounts Payable Processes and Cut Costs with Xsuite and Gimel. We're excited that you all could join us today. And the first thing I always like to do in the beginning of webinars is to introduce our speakers. My name is Shayna Horka and I'm the Product Marketing Manager here at Gimel. I am joined by our key speaker, Manager of Business Development, SAP Solutions Architect at Xsuite, Reggie Goko, and Gimel's Director of Sales Engineering, Dean Meisenheimer. We're really excited to be doing this joint webinar with Xsuite. Now, before we get started, I just have a couple of housekeeping items for you. Keep an eye out for a couple of brief poll questions. The answers will be anonymous, but the higher the participation, the better. We will also have a live Q&A after today's session, so feel free to submit questions throughout the webinar at any point, and then we'll answer as many as we can at the end. If you have any technical difficulties, please send us a message and let us know so we can help you solve any issues you may be having. Now to kick things off, I just have one slide here to tell you about Gimel, and then I'll hand it over to Reggie so he can tell you a little bit about Xsuite. So Gimel is a records information management and governance software company that was founded in 2002. We have a client success team and global network of partners that have been delivering solutions with us for more than 18 years. Our primary technology partners are Microsoft and SAP. Our implementation partners include small specialty SIs with specific areas of expertise, as well as larger global SIs and consultants like PwC and Lockheed Martin. Ultimately, Gimel exists because we recognize that so many enterprises struggle to manage the sheer volume of information and systems they have. For years, we have seen organizations continuously add business applications as well as information, but they haven't been able to create a consistent way to manage their information across these systems. This makes doing business more difficult, less secure, and less compliant. Gimel's family of software products work together to help you create an efficient digital workplace. Now, enough about us. I'll go ahead and hand it over to Reggie so he can introduce Xsuite.
All right. Good morning, guys. Shayna, you can hear me okay, loud and clear, no static?
Yeah, sounds great.
All right. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us today in our webinar. We thank you for taking the time, during this working from home era that we're in, and we're glad that you're here. All right, so to kick things off, my name is Reggie Goko. I'm actually a former customer of Xsuite Solutions. So I used to work for Dole Packaged Foods. I was doing SAP FICO there for about 9 years. And in 2016, we hired Xsuite Solutions to automate our business processes globally for Dole Packaged Foods. So a quick preview as to who Xsuite is, and we promise we only have a few slides, and we'll jump right into an actual live demo so you can see the software at work. So Xsuite has been around for 26 years on the market. We've had 1,200 different implementations in over 60 different countries. And we have a parent company, which is the WMD group that you see up there on the right-hand side. In case you do any research online, please know that WMD and Xsuite is one company with our 12 offices globally. The key takeaway, I would say, when I was sitting in your shoes watching a similar demo is the vendor and integrator part. So basically what this means, you'll be dealing with an Xsuite employee from the time the project starts, pre-sales, configurations, development, post-go-live support, and even your go-live support after the fact when you're live. You're always dealing with an Xsuite employee, which makes your transition, a little bit more cohesive because everybody understands your requirements and your specific business scenario. All right, on to the next slide.
All right, so here's one of those poll questions. You should see it pop up on your screen. It is your SAP accounts payable processes automated? Yes, inside SAP, no, outside of SAP, or maybe you have a manual process.
So please take time to answer this question, especially now during COVID era. A lot of our customers are maximizing the ability to use both the automation in AP and the ability to digitally see records through Gimel without really having to be in the office.
All right, so here it is. You should see the answers popped up on your screen. About 50-50, no outside of SAP and a manual process. Reggie, is that kind of what you're seeing too, in terms of you being out in the field and what you're seeing with your clients?
Yeah, you know, most people that attend our webinars, obviously you would, you know, based on the topic and the expertise or core functionality, this is really the area where people chime into in terms of what automation tools are out there and really what's the best fit in terms of their complex business scenario. What is the one tool that can integrate easily with SAP and really have a very minimal change management? So yeah. All right, so jumping in, so the slide that you're seeing, this is basically diving in now to an overview of our invoice process from an AP standpoint. So the first thing that we do from Xsuite is that we capture the image of the document that you have, whether it's by scanning or by Office 365 or by email. We take all of these files that you have, receive them, and once we receive this image, our software then kicks in and performs the metadata capture of it. And what I mean by that, and you will see this, because of our solution sitting inside your SAP platform, inside your Spro, if I may, sitting side by it, we're automatically able to convert the data, capture the metadata that we need, check it for legal purposes. You know, having been applied to 60 different countries, the rule set inside our engine is taking into account all of those different implementations and making it work for you. And once we capture that metadata, very similar to the Gimel platform as well, where it would take the metadata and automatically grab the exact scenario of where it would be. Now, if you apply that to AP, the system is able to determine what workflow it should kick off, whether it's an MM workflow or an FI workflow. And from there, it would automatically trigger if it needs an approval, if it needs maybe a goods receipts, if it's an MM invoice and it didn't find any goods receipts in there. And the workflow continues on based on the release dollar approval, whether your company has 1 approver or 5 approvers, depending on the dollar amount. The software is able to do that, and in the end, provide you with, I would say, advanced looking reporting that allows you to be proactive in terms of how you manage your AP, shifting the focus from data entry to more of a being a proactive approach in terms of management of your AP, your vendors, and even your cash discounts. And then after all of that is done, in the end, the email that you got from your vendor that has the invoice, maybe you have an attachment of an Excel schedule that shows the backup of the invoice, a bill of lading, whatever the case may be, all of these documents, right, they have to sit somewhere. They have to sit somewhere from a metadata standpoint so that you can easily view it. And this is where Dean comes in from a Gimel standpoint on the last bucket.
Yeah, thanks, Reggie. And so, you know, as you go through the process that Reggie talked about, the last step of the process is the content has to go somewhere. And typically that is stored into, you know, it's stored in an SAP archive. Well, Gimel Document Management for SAP Solutions allows you to enable your Microsoft 365 platform as the archiving platform for SAP. So now as content is brought in, as as it's processed through, as Reggie just talked about, when the content, all the supporting documentation, the emails are stored and associated to the respective transaction, the content can actually be moved automatically behind the scenes into a SharePoint Online library. So now the content is stored in SharePoint Online. It's easy for non-SAP users to view and retrieve. It can be exposed to other services in the Microsoft 365 platform like Search, like Flow, Power BI, and others. And we can bring to bear compliance and governance policies to do things like apply records management policies on that content as well for extended retention over time as it becomes a digital record. So with that, Reggie, I'll hand it back over to you.
Okay, so now we're going to jump into a little bit more of a deeper dive in terms of the end-to-end AP process. So when we take a step back and look at accounts payable in general, there's basically three main buckets, right? The first bucket, we got to receive your invoice, which is the very top box that you're seeing. This is the invoice entry part. And I'm mentioning to you in terms of the solution in AP, because our solution is not just for AP. Down the road, if you wanted to automate procurement like ME21N or SD01 for sales order, I just want you to know that we have those platforms as well, using the same technology, just being presented to you in a different presentation layer. So this particular slide is specific to AP. When your document comes in, whether you're using a scanner, whether you're emailing it, which is one of our best practice methods, or whether you have an Excel file, EDI, or if you're maximizing the use of our business partner portal, which I'll try to show you today too. This is the portal that empowers your vendors now that they can upload their own invoices. Regardless of the path that you choose, our software, the first step that it does, it would automatically do a document validation inside SAP. Again, not to be a repeating tape, but that's the key difference of us. Our solution is inside your SAP. There's no third-party software and whatnot. We're inside there. We can validate the information on the fly. And from there, similar to Gimel, we grab the metadata that we need from the document, and we're automatically able to route the document based on that metadata, whether it's an FI invoice or an MM invoice, which is now the second bucket of the invoice workflow. And you will see this in the demo, depending on the scenario that we're doing. We're going to do an FI invoice today, but if you needed an MM demo for your specific environment, just let us know. We'll schedule something for you. But basically, once the invoice is received, we will then perform these steps that you're seeing on the right box in terms of the coding, in terms of the approval, and finally the invoice being posted. And as what Dean alluded to, when all of this is said and done, it has now to sit in an archiving, which is where Gimel comes into play, allowing you to see all of the documents that you've worked with or the company has worked with as part of your SAP record. Dean, next slide, please. All right.
Unmute myself here. All right, so in the background, as we talked about, Xsuite is managing your AP process, managing all the process around how this information is retrieved, the review, the approvals, and in the background, Gimel document management for SAP for your AP content and any other content that may be coming into your SAP environment, because obviously it's used for a lot more than AP, is archiving that information into Microsoft 365. And what that means is your Microsoft 365 users can continue to use the tools that they're familiar with on a day-to-day basis, whether that's Microsoft Office, whether that's storing items into OneDrive, using Power Apps, using mobile clients, Office Lens. But your Microsoft 365 users can also be adding content to SharePoint Online through the use of Gimel zones and drop-off libraries. And what happens again in the background is content doesn't just have to come through SAP now, it can also come through SharePoint and be attached to SAP. Because Gimel document management for SAP will take the content that's uploaded, associate it to the appropriate SAP transaction, move it to the final resting place in SharePoint Online, and then automatically populate all of the metadata of that document in SharePoint from the SAP transaction data. So it keeps the two environments synced together, archiving the data out and data that comes in through SharePoint, which is obviously typically a broader audience than maybe just your SAP users. It's now expanded to meet all of these individuals as well. Your SAP users, same thing. As Reggie showed, content comes into SAP. It is attached to the transaction. It's stored. Unbeknownst to your SAP users, that content is automatically archived out to Microsoft 365 and stored in a SharePoint Online library. That metadata is synced, as we talked about, so it's well described in SharePoint. But for your SAP users and your Xsuite users, nothing has changed. To them, it's still an SAP document. It still is sitting associated to SAP. They access it exactly the same way. There's no change management in how they have to do their work. And that's a critical factor. So we're off to our next poll question, Shana.
Yep, so you should see something popping up on your screen. This next one and last one is, where do you currently archive SAP documents? A number of answers there. I'll just read through them so you know. SAP Content Server, Microsoft 365, SharePoint Online, Microsoft SharePoint On-Prem or on-premises, OpenText Content Server, homegrown solution, other commercial server, or maybe you don't archive at all.
Lots of choices in the marketplace today, but one of the keys today is everybody's got Microsoft 365, so let's give you a way to enable that as the platform for archiving.
Looks like most people are in the SAP Content Server.
Yep.
Couple others, other commercial solution, and we don't archive at all.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing, and which I should have already done, and let Reggie take over the screen now.
All right, so I'm going to start sharing my screen. Dean, if you could just verify for me that you can see my screen, so I should be off to go. I'm displaying an email here.
Yes, we do.
Awesome. So now this is the part of the demo where we're actually going to show you how both Xsuite solutions AP automation with Gimel would look like in your environment if we were live today. It's something that our customers today are enjoying, especially with the work from home. And honestly, a lot of the projects that were going live in Q3 were being pushed to kind of move along further. So in this demo, there's different hats that I'm going to be wearing, different roles. So understand that I'm doing this in my demo environment. So obviously in here, I'm the only person acting as the vendor, as the buyer, as the approver. So please stay with me as I describe to you the role that I'm doing. So the role that I'm doing right now is I'm acting as, let's say, one of your vendors. So let's say as one of your vendors, you gave out the notice. You said starting 6/25, I'm supposed to now email my invoice to your existing AP.inbox that you may already have. And just so you know, in my demo environment, I'm set up to receive invoices via email. But like I assured you a while ago, you can send invoices via scanner, EDI, and whatever platform you currently have. So in my demo environment, I'll go ahead and click the send. This is something that I sent prior to starting the demo just to save on time. So this is an invoice that I sent. You can see the timestamp here at 9:59. And as soon as that invoice is sent, I want you to realize that the very first touch point for your users, right, whether they're in the US or globally, is already SAP GUI, which is why I'm displaying to you my SAP screen. So when our solution is installed in your environment, we're literally inside your SAP, and this is what you're going to see. You'll have a folder that says Xsuite Cube, and inside that folder, you'll see all of the other solutions that I alluded to. But for now, we're going to focus on the AP side, which is the Xsuite invoice. So today, if you're automating AP, this is what you'll see. And inside here, you'll see all of the different T codes and all of the menus and whatnot that we have available. But the key point here is that you don't have to maintain any user IDs or passwords or maintain a third-party account outside of SAP, because if they have access to SAP, we just need to teach them a couple of T codes, and they can now start enjoying the solution. And really, from an AP standpoint, there's really about just 2 T codes that they need to master. The first one is the Invoice Monitor. As I go in it, you'll see that everything about it is SAP. What I mean by that is you have your F4 functionality here for a drop down. You can pull up a variant just like how I'm doing here. So I'll pull up my variant in here. I'll pull up the US demo variant. So it acts and behaves and looks exactly like SAP. If your environment is in ECC6, for example, where your backend is maintained by different tables in SAP, you know, a table for vendors, a table for GL, a table for dollar amounts. You know, what Xsuite did for us, which is part of the reason why we acquired or we purchased their software, is because of the fact that when we were in ECC, it was very advantageous for us to be able to do this document item selection. So when I click here, it's allowing me to basically run my AP reporting in a detailed line item version. So if you're in ECC and someone wanted to find out the dollar amount and the vendor that you paid, you know, for 2019, you typically have to run an FBL1N, and then you then have to run a GL report and dump those data in Excel and combine it yourself. With Xsuite, they're doing the combination for you. You can run it by GL account, cost center, WBS element, depending on what's live in your platform. And the header selection is your, you know, I would say this is pretty similar to your FBL1N. You can run it by vendor, by year, but then you're able to combine it with the line item. So that's one of the advantages. So now I can choose to click execute or F8, just like any other T code. And when you look at the screen, this is basically our inbound queue. So everything here is untouched. So the line item that I showed you that I sent is this line that I'm highlighting. If you notice, regardless of the geographical location, right, everybody is seeing the same screen. So the software was the one that was able to figure out that the document I sent was FI. It figured out the vendor name, vendor number, the dollar amount, baseline date, and really a bunch of other information here on the right that I won't bore you with, but it's capturing all of this information, validating it against your master data on the fly. And the one thing that I liked about Xsuite when I was looking at them at Dole is that they do a good job of trying to copy and mimic standard SAP icons, including this stop sign that you're seeing here. So this means exactly the same as your normal SAP stop sign. Anything in yellow and red are items that you probably need to work on, need some coding and approval and whatnot, versus green items are items that are already in a workflow. So now I'm going to go in the invoice. So as I go in this invoice, you will see from a very, I would try to describe it in a very non-technical way, yeah? So what's happening here is if you ever did a reference call to any of our vendors, they're going to tell you that this is the screen that kind of changed the way that they manage AP. Why is that? So basically here on the right, you have a nice invoice image that they're giving you. They're giving you all the fields here pre-populated and really a bunch of other functionalities on the left that we can choose to activate, deactivate, or maybe add a functionality that's specific to you. So if you notice, if I look at the header data, these are the exact same tabs that you would normally see in your FB60, in your Miro, and in your MyGo. So Xsuite combined all of them, and then they pre-populated for you in advance based on the metadata that they were able to grab from this invoice image on the right. And mind you, I'm doing this demo, you know, I'm not in my office, so I'm in my laptop doing this demo. If we were live in your environment, right, and let's say you're back in the office or maybe in your home office, you have multiple monitors, you know, you as a user can easily go here in settings and you can click this button, in place, out place, and it will automatically pop the image out in a separate SAP session. And what is this doing? It's basically allowing you to put this on the monitor on your right, and the software would remember that the next time you log in and you open an invoice, that's how the setup you wanted it to be. So it's giving you more space. And if you want to pop back in, you just click the same icon, and you're back. So now what I want to do is walk you through this screen, because really from an AP standpoint, and I'm speaking also from a customer standpoint, this is the screen where your AP is going to be at. Your finance people, when they're doing some research, this is what they look at, right? So in the screen, how does this screen work? So let me maximize this a little bit. When I click this marker button, the first thing that you'll notice is that the software is highlighting certain areas in green. What does that mean? It means the software went into that inbox, read the attachment line by line, pixel by pixel, and then based on the rule set that we have with our engine, that's where the 1,200 implementations in 60 countries and years of experience comes into play. It's purposely choosing the items in green as a way to populate the information in the middle, which is why when I hover over here, it's telling me that, yep, this is what I'm using as my document date. And yes, on this one, you want me to use this as my reference. That's why it's putting it there. And in here, when I hover over here, it's telling me this is how I'm calculating the dollar amount in terms of net and gross. And if I further expand on this, right, because this is very critical. If you're in the market shopping for an AP automation, vendor recognition is the #1 key, right? If the software is not recognizing vendor, then it's a bust. So you want to make sure that the software has good rule sets to capture vendors. So with Xsuite, what they do is they take a minimum of 3 items that needs to match against your vendor master before they make the association. So what do I mean by this? When I hover over here, it's telling me that, hey, I found the street address, the phone number, and the email matching to your vendor master, which is why I'm choosing this vendor number to populate the header data. And that's how it populated that field. And let's say you're dealing with, I don't know, real life scenario, 20-page document, right? Instead of hovering through the pages one by one over here, which you can do, a faster way is, let's say you wanted to find out where to grab the dollar amount. All you got to do is double click on the field and watch the image on the right. When I double click it, it's automatically going to shift the image, take you to that section, and highlight where it grabbed the dollar amount from. And that's standard in all of the fields. So if I go to reference and double click, it's going to automatically shift there and take me there and show me that, hey, this is where I got the reference number from. And the other feature that we really love, let's say your AP noticed that the ship to address has changed, right? It doesn't look familiar to them. They want somebody in the vendor master to take a look and verify if this has changed or if we need to do something. Instead of typing all of this information in, all they got to do is click this icon, and it activates our drag and drop feature. So I just highlight it, drag it to the left, click save, and the software is automatically putting in the username, the date, and the timestamp of when that information was added. And if you took a quick second to compare the two, you will see that it copied it verbatim, the spaces, the dashes, the line by line, and whatnot. And that's just showing you the power behind the engine. And part of what we give to you as standard is we always include the copy of the email of when it came in, because vendor behavior varies, right? No matter how many times you tell a vendor to, let's say, put the PO number on the invoice, they still put it on the email perhaps. So what Xsuite did is they made switching record type very easy for you. Unlike standard SAP, where you have to do an FRBO8 to reverse an FI invoice, in here, as long as the document is still in workflow and hasn't been approved, you can easily toggle to an MM invoice. I can toggle to an MM or switch it back to an FI, regardless of where I'm at. I don't have to go through a slew of different T codes. And in here, part of what we deliver, we allow you to email directly from here. So you click the email icon, the copy of the image is automatically included. You can maximize, minimize the image. You can download, print. It's really up to you. You can use our templates. So our templates, we have templates for vendor communication, coding, approval, really depends on their scenario. And as you can see, there's some sort of intelligence behind the template, because the template is automatically figuring out the dollar amount, the invoice number, and the date of the invoice. And when you send this, this is part of what Gimel is storing for you in terms of the archive. It's something that you would get to go back to, 5 years down the road. You pull up the SAP posted document, it would be in there as part of what was archived for you. And there's a bunch of other functionalities here. You can create a vendor here, automatically request for a vendor creation. You can maneuver the workflow on the fly if, let's say, you wanted to pass it to somebody else in your team outside of the pre-configured workflow. That's up to you. And now I'm going to do a quick system check here. And this is what I alluded to in the beginning. What the software is doing here, it's not only checking the Xsuite configuration, it's also checking your configuration, because we're literally side by side your Spro. This is us making sure that all of your BAPIs, Z tables, or anything you've done in the FICO module would still work. And in our experience, it always works because we're not overwriting anything you have. Meaning your FB60, your Myros, and your MyGos are still there. We're not replacing it. We're just giving you added tools in terms of what you can use. And now I'm going to hit Park. When I hit Park, the software now is going to route this for invoice coding, because the scenario that we're doing is an FI invoice, right? So this is now being routed to a buyer in your company who then now needs to provide the coding. So now I'm going to switch hats, okay? So the way we communicate all of our workflows, regardless whether it's a buyer needing to code or a PO owner needing to do a goods receipts, we're always communicating the workflow through your standard email. We use the business workplace inbox, and we would connect this to your standard email that they would see an email just like what I'm displaying here. And it would have the verbiage in here. We can customize the verbiage to your liking. And then depending on where they click, if they click the email on the link and they're clicking it on a laptop that has SAP GUI, it would automatically open up the correct T code for them. But instead of doing that, I think I should take this time to show you our Xflow web solution. So our Xflow web solution, this is allowing you to basically perform the task that you need on the web. Anywhere where there's a connection, you can access this. So the invoice that you and I sent is over here. You can do a preview of your item. That's basically allowing you to see the invoice image here on the right as it pulls up. And then you can choose to click the play icon to go inside the workflow. And as you can notice, everything in it, is very similar to the SAP GUI screen that you saw. You'll have the invoice image here on the right as it pops up. And at the same time, you'll have the ability to basically perform your coding. The software is intelligent. Depending on the step of the workflow, it's automatically taking you to the area where you need to be, which in this case, on the accounting block, because this is where you need to perform the coding. And the coding is pretty straightforward. You just click the plus sign. You can see the F4 functionality, or the dropdown, is still there because, technologically speaking, this is sitting on top of your SAP. So I'm still connected real time to any GL accounts that you have, any master data information. But I'll go ahead and cheat to save time and put in the coding that I have. And I'll pull up the cost center in here just like I normally do. And these coding blocks are things that we would activate depending on your need. If you use internal order, WBS element, you'll see the real estate key here because some of our demos are for real estate companies and they have this activated in their field. And basically, once you provide the coding, you just hit save and you're done. But just to show you more, you can use Excel. You can upload an Excel template for coding. The software is intelligent enough that by the third or fourth time that you've done the coding, similar coding, it would then make the recommendation to you to use that coding. And while you're in this place, you can still see the header information that you saw inside SAP GUI. You can see the details, the vendor. The item data would be blank because there's no coding yet. You can see the text in here that we put a while ago, and I can say in here, please approve project good to go, for example. I hit the check mark, and then hit the save. And basically the same concept, it puts in the username, the date and timestamp that we did a while ago. And in here, you would also see the log. This is for my IT folks on the line. It's just giving you a system record of what's happened to the document thus far. And same concept as in the SAP GUI. You can maximize, minimize, download, print the image as you please. And yeah, once you provide the coding, you hit save, you click OK. And now the workflow moves into the next step of the workflow. And in this step now, I'm going to jump in and show you what the approver would see. So now same concept, right? Someone now in your company is getting the approval workflow in their email. And depending on where they click this email, whether it's a SAP GUI, a laptop, or let's say they're using their tablet, or maybe they're out in a conference or out on the road, they can use another option that we give you is they can use our Fiori apps, which is what I'm showing you here. So this is our Fiori app, and it's the same exact concept. You can see in your inbox the items that you have to work on. I have it configured for all tasks, but you can minimize it to a certain task that you're authorized to do. And in here, we're going to do the approval for an invoice. Same concept. I can open the item in here. I can do a preview as I see fit. This gives me just a quick snippet of what the document is. Document number, vendor, dollar amount. I have the invoice image. And from here, I can click open work item, for example. And now it's taking me, again, intelligently to the right place of the screen as to where I can do the approval. And very similar to the previous screen on the web and on the SAP GUI, it's going to do the same. It's going to present the same screen to you, very similar looking, so that the change management is very minimal. And if you want to, you can do this in SAP GUI. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. But you'll have the invoice image on your right. All of the fields that I previously shown a while ago still available at your fingertips, and basically be able to perform the approval. And the approval is pretty straightforward. I can click the check. It would approve all line items. I can do individual line item approval if I wanted to, or I can reject one line item and approve 4 of them. It's really up to you. So I'll click the approval here, just like I would normally do. And then I can still hover over the header data if I wanted to, see the details, see the vendor information if I wanted to. I can go to the accounting block, see what my team put it in as coding. I can see the attachments, the email if I wanted to. I can put in the text in here, good to go, for example. Hit save, same concept, username, date, and timestamp. And yeah, and basically here I can go to the item release and show you the approval that I did and the log. And from here, you just hit save. And now that you've saved the document, right, it's out of your inbox, it's fully approved, it's gone from your workflow. Now what you will end up having is basically a posted document, right? This posted document is now available for you in your F110 payment batch. And I'm going to use this opportunity now to show you the second T code that I was referring to a while ago, which is our Invoice Overview. So the Invoice Overview is a very powerful T code. This is the second T code that I would say your team would need to know. So if anybody ever wanted to find out where an invoice was in your company, they would run this T code 24 hours of the day, regardless of their geographical location. And what this T code does is that basically from here, it would show you who has the workflow in your environment. It will show you the exact name of the person that's working on the document and the exact step that they're at. And not only that, it only shows you here on the right, it has the ability to help you be proactive with your cash discounts. So again, this is my demo environment, so everything is a red, but similar concept. Anything in yellow and in green is items that you probably want to pay so you can take advantage of your cash discounts. And basically items on the red are the items where you missed the cash discount already. And the other thing that I like about this, standard workflow in SAP, it's very cumbersome to maneuver the workflow once a person locked the record. So for example, this record is locked by Jan. He's working on it. But what happens if Jan calls in sick? What do? Normally, you have to call your IT and they have to help you. With Xsuite, all you got to do is go in to the workflow like I'm showing you. Again, this is a very powerful tool. There's a lot of features here. I'm just showing you the highlights. You click on the in process, and now it's giving you the ability to restart the workflow or restart the step. What does that mean? So restart workflow means if your workflow is 10 steps and you're in step 10, if you click this, you'll go back to step 1. Restart step means I'm going to stay in step 10. I just want it to be available again to the pool of different people in my company. And that's what this software is allowing you to do at the power of the fingertips of your power users, really. And in here, once you restart the workflow, it becomes available again, which is why you're seeing 25 years, the agent number. And you can just click on this icon, and it will tell you all of the different people that is available to perform this task. And this is automatic. We would configure this in a way that the only people displayed are the items that have the ability, have the authority to perform that task. And once the workflow is posted and the document is good to go, what ends up happening is you'll have a posted document similar to this item here, and you can drill in, which is a standard functionality of ours. You're able to drill in, it takes you to the FBO3 screen, but now the game changer is, now you can go here, click on attachment list, and now it's gonna pull up that connection with Gimel. What does that mean? Anybody in your company can now have access to the copy of the invoice. Whether it's an auditor, whether it's finance, whether it's sales, marketing, they can pull up their own invoice. They don't need to download anything special. They have it in their fingertips. And let's say you're going through an audit, you double click here, and this is giving you a play-by-play action in terms of literally what happened to the document from the time it went in, from the time it got posted, and showing you all the highlights in terms of what happened to the document, a second-by-second play to the document. Last but not least, real quick, this is our vendor portal, because now that we've empowered your business to automate AP, this is now you empowering your vendors. If you want them to search for their own documents, they can do it here. If you want them to upload their own invoices, they can do it here. You can put company announcements, working from home due to COVID. They can even send you proposals to maintain or change your master data. And the most common thing that our customers rave about is this dynamic discount. It's allowing your vendors to basically handpick certain invoices that they have in your environment and be able to offer you a dynamic discount if you pay them at a certain time. And this is automatically starting a workflow on your end, allowing you to basically approve or reject the proposal that they're giving you in terms of what they're proposing to you. You just click add, and you select a couple of invoices, and they can say, I'll give you 15% discount or worth $969 if you pay me by the second. And this is sending a binding offer, which attaches the workflow on your end. So Dean, that's my part. I take it back to you, sir.
All right, if you'll stop sharing your screen, I'll share mine.
All right.
There we go, share, and so as Reggie talked about, and you guys should be able to see SharePoint's online site now. As Reggie talked about, as the content is posted into SAP, in the background, Gimel Records Management is, or excuse me, not Gimel Records Management, Gimel Document Management for SAP is automatically archiving that data out to SharePoint Online. And because the information has now been moved into Microsoft 365, what that does is it opens up a wealth of possibilities, because Microsoft 365 gives you a breadth of different services that are available out there that you can bring to bear on any content being stored there. So here I have a website set up just to represent Procure to Pay. And in here I have a few different libraries. And let's go into my purchase orders library. And here we see a bunch of different purchase orders. Here's the purchase order that Reggie was working with. If I double click that purchase order, I can bring it up. I can view it directly from SharePoint. So even though I may not be an SAP user and I may not have access to Xsuite, I can view the same content, especially if I'm a mobile user, if I'm out in the field, if I'm on the road. But the other nice thing is, what if the vendor sends the invoice to me by mistake? I work in operations, I ordered some equipment, they didn't send it to purchasing or AP, they sent it to me. Or I get a call and say, hey, we need some supporting documentation. Well, Gimel zones allow me to come in and simply grab a document, drag it and drop it onto a zone, and now I can prompt the SharePoint user for one piece of information. I just need you to come in and give me the purchase order number that you want to tie this to in SAP. I click OK. The document gets uploaded to SharePoint Online and placed in the Gimel approved drop-off library. And when that happens, Gimel Document Management for SAP queries SAP, pulls down the information related to that purchase order, and then will automatically route it to the correct storage location in SharePoint Online. So everything doesn't have to be uploaded and dumped into one library. I can actually route things intelligently, and we'll see it show up in here in a moment. I can route things intelligently to different libraries based on things like vendor name or vendor ID or any of my other master data that I have in SAP. So here's our purchase order library. Here you can see the new document hasn't come over yet. It'll be here in a minute. But here you can see all of these purchase orders that are stored in SharePoint Online are now well described. We've pulled information down from SAP. We've populated the metadata columns in SharePoint using that information. And as an example, if we were to go look at that same purchase order in SAP, I don't have access to Xsuite. I'm just a casual SAP user. I can come in, I can look at my, as Reggie showed, I can look at my purchase order. I can look at my attachment list. And here I see there's my new purchase order has been associated to the attachment list of this transaction. What happens if I decide, oh, you know what, this shouldn't be here, and I delete this document either directly through SAP GUI or through the Xsuite process? The document gets automatically removed from SharePoint on the back end because that's my repository for SAP. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I can automatically route things to different libraries based on any of the information that I have in SAP, any of my master data. So here I have a set of purchase orders that were actually routed to a library conveniently named German documents because they're all related to vendors in Germany. If I were to come back into SAP GUI and I were to change purchase orders and we were to go look at one of these other ones here, we'll take a look at that one. We can see that 579, if we look at the address for the vendor, they're in Berlin. If we come back and take a look, here's that same purchase order. The same purchase order is related to that, or same POs related to that transaction, related to the same vendor. They've been routed to a new location since they're related to a different vendor. Now, as I mentioned, because I have the information in SharePoint Online, because I'm archiving all of the content coming into SAP out to Microsoft 365, I can start to take advantage of the other services that are available. Here's the purchase order I uploaded just a moment ago. You see that it's been populated. Maybe I now want to route this to somebody for review that doesn't have access to SAP, right? How would I do that? Well, if my company is standardized on Microsoft 365 and we're using Teams as a collaboration platform, I could easily select a document, select a flow, come in here and say, let me post a message to Teams for this PO. And when I do that, what'll happen is it'll bring up the flow approval here real quick. Say, do I want to run this flow? I say, yes, I do. Run the flow. And now a link to this document in SharePoint is going to get routed out, placed into a team automatically. So now a very casual Microsoft 365 user who knows nothing about SAP, who knows nothing about AP, can simply come in here, come into my team, look at the general review and say, oh, I need to review and approve this document that's shown up. And again, just like I could with routing the documents to different libraries based on vendor IDs, I may route them to different teams based on department, based on project, however I need to, because I'm exposing this information now to all of the services that are available to me. The other thing I might want to do is to be able to go out and look and search for information, right? The information's in SharePoint Online. It's archived here. I have all of the metadata. It's now being indexed by the SharePoint search engine. Well, I can now leverage things like Gimmel's enhanced search to come out and do a search and look for all of my related information. Gimmel's enhanced search gives you an enhanced user experience for SharePoint. The normal SharePoint search experience, I get a big long list of documents back really with without a lot of information provided. With Gimmel's enhanced search, not only can I set up different search profiles, so if I want to search for legal documents versus SAP documents, I can have a completely different set of information displayed here. When I execute my search, here I ran a search for documents related to New York. I get back a list of all the documents that match that search. I can configure through a point and click interface the different metadata columns that I want displayed in my search results. And I can then choose, have any of the data displayed, and I can use this data to sort, to filter, to change my view around. I can also come in and set up refiners on the left that can be more enhanced than kind of the out-of-the-box refiners that SharePoint provides. So now I could come in and say, well, you know what? I want to limit my search results to only PDF files. Or in this example, I've got 3 different types of content from SharePoint. I know I'm only going to deal with AP information today, so I only want to look at documents related to my purchase orders in SharePoint Online that have been archived out of SAP. Here's all my documents. Here's the one we were looking at earlier that Reggie was working with. Here's all that information pulled down. If I want to change my search up, maybe I now want to go look for only things related to Berlin. I simply change my search. I run the new search. Now I get a much shorter list. And again, I could filter it down, narrow it down, do whatever I need to do. So the idea is, as I bring information out, as I add information to SAP, SAP is my system of record. As I manage the process through Xsuite, as information comes in, as things are approved, I may need to expose that information to a broader audience. I may need to make it available to a broader audience. That broader audience may need to add additional information. And by enabling the Microsoft 365 platform as my SAP archive, it now becomes a more flexible and open platform for access to the same information that the AP team is working with through the Xsuite interface, because they have a much more specialized function they need to perform. Okay. So with that, I know we're coming up on the top of the hour. I do want to leave a few minutes for Q&A. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to take us to the last slide here.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and get started on reading those questions just so we can fit as many in as we can in this short time frame. So the first question we have, Reggie, I think this one's for you. It says, what happens when an approver of an invoice is not available, such as calling in sick?
Sure. So, Dean, you mind if I actually share my screen one more second?
No, go ahead.
All right. That's actually a very common and good question. So inside the tool of the software, there's a screen that allows the user. You can see my screen, Dean?
Yes.
All right. So you can pull up any existing users. And in here, you can basically assign a substitute based on the role and even based on a certain date, which is making it powerful, right? Because if somebody called in sick today on a Thursday, but let's say they were out since last Monday, you can backdate this and the software would automatically reroute everything that it had since Monday. And the other thing while I'm on the screen is, let's say you have a team member and whatnot that is really busy. If you ever wanted someone's workflow to be escalated to a manager, director, or a co-team member, you can assign that role in this screen and say, if after 5 days it hasn't moved, please move it to the next user. So these are just standard best practice out-of-the-box functionalities. Great question.
Great, thank you. And then this one, I believe this one's for Dean. It says, what changes have to be made in SAP and Microsoft 365?
Really, no changes have to be made on either side. Gimmel's document management for SAP is a web-hosted application, basically middleware, that in SAP you make some configurations. On the SharePoint side, there's an add-in that gets placed in to enable access. But all of the other configuration of setting up the repository definitions, doing the metadata mapping, all of that, pulling the information down from the BAPI, is done in the Gimmel document management for SAP management console, which is just done through the independent web app.
Great, and the next one is, how long does the AP process tool take to implement? The Xsuite tool, I'm assuming they mean.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Our typical project, the best practice package, is anywhere between 40 to 45 days. So.
Great. And then it looks like we have one more here, so maybe we will actually finish on time. Do you help transition previously archived data to SharePoint?
Yes, there's actually SAP publishes some documentation on how you can move items from one SAP repository to another. And in the background, what Gimmel document management for SAP is doing is just simply creating and setting up another archive link repository so that when you enable that and you now say things should be in this repository versus their previous repository, there are ways that actually the information can be moved over. And we've done that for a number of clients that we've transitioned off of legacy archiving platforms to Microsoft 365. So it can be a pretty automated process.
Okay, well, that sums up our questions, unless I see one come in at the last minute. If anyone has any further questions, Dean, I know the emails are there. I don't know if there's a slide after this as well with kind of just a generic email. Feel free to email any one of us directly, or you can contact us at info@gimmel.com, and we'll go ahead and route you to the appropriate party depending on what your question is. And for those interested in a recording of this, we're going to send out a recording of this webinar via email to everyone within 24 to 48 hours. But that concludes our webinar. Thank you, Dean and Reggie, and thank you everyone for joining. Have a good day.
Thank you, Shana.
Thank you.